Welcome back to the Now What podcast. I'm your host, Arian Foster. We want to give a shout out to Smarty Pants for the title sponsor of this podcast, Smarty Pants Vitamins. Go get you some. If you are feeling lethargic and you need some nutrients in you, Smarty Pants is the way to go. But today, we have a special guest in the building, man. We go back from alma mater, same alma mater. We graduated from the University of Tennessee. My man is a former NFL superstar. Now is heavy in the politics game. And so we're going to rap about all of that. My man, Donte Stallworth, welcome, man.
Appreciate you, brothers. I'm glad to be here.
Man, yeah, had to have you on, man. I mean, when I first was starting the podcast, I was like, yo, I got to get Donte on, dog. He's you're a different cat, man. You're not a regular football player, man.
Yeah, they try to paint us with a broad brush, man. So
I hear that a lot, but like, there's some dumb football players.
No doubt. Oh, hey, look, you preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah,
no
man.
doubt. But they don't expect it from none of us.
That's
though.
true.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
So you got to be able to let them know, like, hey, man, I went to school too. I like learning too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I can play football at the same time.
Yeah,
I
think it's just rare. It's rare to have that that ability to have like this physical prowess. But as well, you can dance that mental dance as well, and that's what I see in you as well. Was just kind of doing a little bit of research before the podcast and just listening to you speak, just the eloquence and the way you put your thoughts together. It's a rare to have both qualities. Man.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I mean, it's your brain, so no, man. But so we can go a lot of different places to start out, man. But I want to start out about the thing that I hate the most, and that's the NCAA.
Add me to that list.
Right. So it's interesting though, because I'm heavy on Twitter, man. I love Twitter, and you're kind of you're an advocate against the NCAA, but you're a proud alum of your university. Yeah. Explain that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. You know what? At the end of the day, man, the dudes I went to work with, the cats I went to school with, the dudes I would hang out with and play video games with, all that is a part of my experience at Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? Including the NCAA. And at the time, it wasn't even on my mind that I'm out here making money. I mean, I'm out here making money for the university and for the NCAA, making millions and millions. I
give a little context. What years did you go to school?
I was there from 98 to 01.
Yeah, so you won a championship, correct?
My freshman year, we won a championship. Yeah.
So you were there in the height of the Tennessee days.
Yeah, we had some good years, man.
When you were getting free cars and shit.
Yeah. Everybody always asks me, how'd you get all the way from California to Tennessee?
Right.
And, I used to kind of joke with him and was like, I mean, you know how I got there. They paid me a meal up front.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? A meal to sign.
Right.
But, you can't joke like that no more because then they're going to start looking through and be like, man, what were you?
But you can, though, and you need to. Because they did that to me, right? So, like, it's super popular now to kind of discredit the NCAA and talk bad about the NCAA. But I did it when it wasn't popular.
Doubt.
And I got crucified for it. But I went out and said that I took money from the NCAA. I'm not from the NCAA, from just various places. It comes from everywhere. Came out and said I took money, and then I had all this backlash. But the crazy stuff was the backlash was a lot from former players. Like, I didn't expect that. They were like, man, what are you doing, man? Like, you snitching. I'm like, we're not selling drugs. Let's just get that off the table. Like, this is not snitching, bro.
Right.
Like, this is just bringing to light corruptness, and it needs not be. So, like, I always tell people, like, if think about if everybody in the NCAA today stood up and said, I got money illegally. Right. You think the NCAA, they have multi-billion-dollar contracts with TV networks.
Right.
They're gonna not play the games.
Right.
They're gonna you're the product.
No, they're gonna protect their interests, no doubt.
Have to.
Always. The thing with the NCAA to me is that it's been going on for decades, right? So I think social media has had a big impact in allowing these kids in college, these young men, to understand, hey, man, kid from University of Central Florida, the punter.
Right.
He was making money off his YouTube video.
That's right.
And the NCAA gave him a cease and desist order.
That's
insane.
Or
else, you're out of here. And he was like, man, I'm making this money on YouTube, from his trick shots and everything else he was doing. and NCAA cut his contract. You know what I'm saying? So
they haven't reconciled that yet, or
not the last I heard, not to my knowledge. No, I mean, you know the NCAA, they not.
But that's what kills me about the NCAA. Is like, how can you take away like?
It's the mob. They got the FBI on the payroll.
Rights.
They got the FBI on the payroll. They got the FBI doing their dirty work for them, man.
I remember they called me. When I said I came out and said I took money.
Who called you?
Not the FBI.
I mean, even the NCAA.
Yeah, the NCAA. They called me and they were like, they said, you know, we're calling for an investigation on the money you took, yada yada yada. They say, are you willing to cooperate? I said, absolutely not. But good luck.
Right.
Do your thing. But like, that shit doesn't care. Like, I can't wait. I'm gonna get Reggie Bush on the podcast, and I can't wait to talk to him about like when people tell me like, oh, they're gonna take away seasons from. I'm like, who cares? Like what? Like nobody. Like dog. Reggie Bush when I was in college was the best running back in college, bro.
No doubt.
I don't care. Like we don't live in 1933.
Right.
I can Google, YouTube, look at who was balling in 2005. It was Reggie Bush. I don't care what money he took. Like you can take away his Heisman, but you can't. Like, come on, fam.
Yeah.
Like they're so scared of these paper sharks. It's insane to me.
It is, and you know, I was talking to someone the other day about. Someone was asking me, what is it that you want to tell the world, just in general, just speaking from a general point of view. And I said, there's a few things. There's a lot of things that I want to tell the world, but one of them is I want to tell them that the NCAA needs to be abolished. Like,
no question.
It needs to be dismantled from the top to the bottom, and there needs to be a way where, I mean, because this is the thing to me. This is one of the stories that I always tell people. You look at, I think it was Shabazz Napier from UConn.
Okay, yeah.
When they won the championship, and after the game, you know, everybody's excited, and they asked him something like, you know, how do you feel? How are your emotions right now? And he basically said, I'm more concerned about how am I going to eat tomorrow. And they were like, what? What do you mean? You're a superstar.
I love how you did
everybody has money. You've got cars, and this perception that they have, even the media, the perception that they have of us as collegiate athletes, especially in a big time program on a big time stage, they can't fathom to even believe that these kids weren't getting 3 meals a day throughout the course of a year.
Yeah.
And so these kids are bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars yearly, and yet they can't even get 3 full course meals throughout for 12 straight months. Right. You can't work in the off season. Yeah. You know, there's no time to work, and even if it was, you can't, because
what kills me is like you don't even own your namesake. Like, if somebody wants to pay me...
Your name is Toby. That's your name.
That's what it is, though, right?
Your name is Toby.
If somebody wants to pay me for writing on a piece of paper, you're saying that I can't partake in that transaction? Like, at what point do we lose ourselves to where I get constitutional rights stripped away from me because I signed this contract at 17, 18 years old, and I have no idea the amount of product I'm providing for this multi-billion-dollar company.
It's a self-auction. It's like... you get to pick the school that you want to go to.
People hate when you...
I know, I don't care. And they need to hear it again. They need to hear it again. It's like a self-auction. You get to pick where you want to go to school, but once you get to that school, once your feet land on those shores, you have no more rights to your namesake. You can't make money off your name until you leave that university, or until you no longer have any type of relationship with the NCAA. And... what other type of business, multi-billion-dollar business, does that?
Yeah, I mean, I get into it with trolls on the internet all the time, and one of the arguments I always tell them, I'm like, name another. They're like, oh, it's just like an internship. It's an internship. I was like, all right, well, point me in the direction of any Fortune 500 company, billion-dollar company that the interns are the product.
Right.
Like, show me.
Right.
This is such as a false equivalence. Like, it's a logical fallacy, and people do not think their thoughts through, and they just have, all it boils down to is like, you don't think young cats should be getting paid millions of dollars. That's all it boils down to.
It's that, but it's you know what it is too. A lot of it, what I've come to find out is when I talk to people, or tweeting and you're talking to them. And when the conversation goes to, immediately they start off with, you're getting a free education.
I hate
and I'm
that
like,
shit.
I'm like, you obviously don't know what free means.
Yeah, we have different definitions.
We've got different definitions of free, and yours is not in the dictionary. Your definition of free is not in the dictionary.
Yeah, man.
And so all this stuff kind of derives back to, a lot of the people, the average American is going to leave college in debt. Scholarship players do not leave college in debt. So they're looking at it from their own experience.
And I would argue that point.
They would look at it from their own experience and say, I'm in debt. I got to pay $20,000, $30,000, and I'm grinding. I'm struggling while you over here making money in the NFL. Once you leave, you're making money.
Small percentage that does, yeah.
Right, and you're debt free once you leave college. And so they're looking at it from their own personal experiences.
Right.
But they don't. It's hard for people to. Who are in that position to empathize with student athletes and especially the perception of student athletes that they have.
And this is why I would say I would argue that point is because there might not be a monetary debt that we leave college with, but the debt that was paid can never get paid back, right? So like the physical toll that's put on our bodies. Exactly. Granted, that is the trade, but as a kid, you have no idea what you're getting into, especially when we were coming out. Right. There was no there was no CTE studies,
right?
And if there were not mainstream, and so we didn't know. We thought a concussion was just, hey, you got your bell rung, you'll be back later.
Yep.
So the debt that we are leaving college with is far greater than the debt of any student of any pre-med. I don't care what you do, because like we put our lives on the line. Like I know cats like Inky Johnson. I had him on my podcast. He's paralyzed forever.
Right.
Like he's never gonna get use of his arm back. Would you rather have that or $30,000 debt? Like it's not the same, and people need to stop treating it like that, and people need to start treating it like a business. But like to the point, that's what I don't like. I get it from Tennessee Vol fans all the time. I get it from like, oh, you're so anti-Tennessee. I'm like, I'm not anti-Tennessee. I'm anti-NCAA. It just happens to be under the umbrella of Tennessee.
Yeah.
But that, and they hated me just from jump. I'm an atheist. This is a southern state. It's just I have no chance to have any fans in that state. But so I
people
never
love you. There's some people that love you in Tennessee.
You'll find pockets, man. Let me know when you FaceTime me. It's rare, but it's hard for me to support the NCAA, and I don't like to watch it. If there's a nice cat though, I have to check him out.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to support the NCAA, and that means I have to kind of cut ties with not necessarily relationships, but the things involved, which is Tennessee, right? So like I don't like to go to their events because I'm basically promoting this free labor,
right?
And so it's hard. It's hard for me that's the dissonance I have in my head. I'm very grateful for the relationships that I established and all of that, but like I can't even be like, go Big Orange, because I don't want the Big Orange to go because they're not paying their players,
right?
And it's hard. How do you reconcile that? Because you're vocal with
tribalism, man. It's all about tribalism.
Okay. As long as you admit it, though. I'm not mad.
It's all about tribalism, man.
I'm
when I talk about Trump on Twitter and all the crazy shit that he does, then people will say, "Well, well, you saying this about Obama?" And I'm like, "Listen, man. I retired from the league 5 years ago, man. I am no longer. My team is human rights team. I'm not team Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal. I don't care about that shit.
Right.
I care about what I care about. Right. I'm not gonna put as an athlete. I always hated when people would put me in a box as an athlete. I'm much more than that. You're not gonna put me in a box of a liberal or a Democrat or a conservative or a Republican. You're not gonna put me in a box. So when for me, what I'm saying, the only time I'm like, go Team America is when we're in the Olympics.
Right.
The only time that you'll see me waving, like being a fall patriot, like all the other people do that wave Confederate flags and U.S. flags at the same time, which is,
odd.
You know what I mean?
Odd.
Like that's yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's like waving a Tennessee and a Bama flag at the same time in both hands. Like,
and that shit blows my mind. But.
It's stupid. It's so stupid. But the point of that is saying that when I was at Tennessee, growing up, you know what I'm saying, I went from not even watching college football to looking at college football, and I remember seeing Ike Hilliard as a true freshman, 82-yard touchdown in the Sugar Bowl, and I'm like, damn, I can do that. And so when I saw that, I'm like, I want to do that. And then how do I do that? Oh, well, my parents can't pay for college, so I got to get a scholarship. Okay, how do I get a scholarship? I got to read through the NCAA manual, the clearinghouse stuff. I gotta, get my SAT right, get my grades right, and then obviously I gotta perform on the field.
Right.
So I went through all that on my own. I kind of like set everything up. So the climb, I mean, it was crazy because the climb that it took for me to get there, and then, once I got to Tennessee and it was the same grind, you know what I'm saying? So my mind was just focused on getting to the league because that was my dream.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then when I look back on all the stuff, and not, again, I went from, and all college players that end up making it to the NFL, and, obviously the average life for an NFL player career-wise is only 3 years. So
right.
I'm looking back on what I did in college, and high school kids get to college, immediately thrusted into this system of exploitation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So for the whole time, you are literally being exploited for your talents. The trade-off is that you get to go to school and you get to get an education with that. But
do you?
But I mean, as far as like being able to have a diploma, having that piece of paper,
right.
What that means to different people, that's up in the air for discussion. But when you look back and you see all the going from your time in college to in a full system of exploitation, because you're not there to go to school, you're there to play football or whatever your respective sport is.
So I was going to ask you, like, you were a psychology major, correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, how deep did you get to go into your field of study? Because when I first went on campus, I wanted to major in astronomy.
Yeah, me too. Hey, wait, what?
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know that. we
for real?
We just had a Spider-Man moment.
You serious?
Yeah.
Man.
I went to you Fernandez. It was Fernandez there when you was there.
You know what? I was there, bro. I was there for one day, and I saw that you had to be somewhat competent in math. Yeah. And I was like, my parents bought me a telescope before they bought me a football.
Oh, that's
I was
beautiful.
in love. I was in love with astronomy.
I didn't know that.
I realized that you had to, be somewhat competent in math. And I was like,
so I'm actually doubling back now. I'm retaking math classes now to get caught up on all the math because I don't know if you even asked, but like, so I tried to they said, what do you want to declare as your major? I said astronomy. They said, well, those classes
you can't take those classes. Exactly.
So then I was like, shit. So for like 2 years, I'm kind of just on campus taking all the electives, all the regular classes. So like it's like psychology. Were you able to like really dig into your studies? Because I'm as a 30-year-old man right now. Yeah. I'm more interested in learning than I ever was, and I don't know if it's like this for everybody, but like as a 30-year-old man, I'm just like, bro, I'm a baby in the world, and everything is interesting to me, and I read up what I can, and I watch what I can, I just suck up all the information that I can. But as a 19, 18-year-old kid coming onto a college campus that just wanted to play in the NFL, I had no ambition to try to be a scholar.
Man,
but I tried to choose
Spider-Man moment for real. Man.
I tried to choose, and for those that don't know, Spider-Man moment, it's a meme on the internet where Spider-Man is looking at Spider-Man and he's pointing at himself. But I had no ambition to try to be a scholar. Yeah. But even if I did, I couldn't have given it my all because you can't serve two masters. No pun intended.
No. Right.
So for psychology, could you dig in?
Yeah, man. So not really. Okay, so this is how it went down with me. My mom, I'm from California, from Sacramento, California, and I was looking at. I had 5 schools I had listed. I had Cal Berkeley because it was right down the road, like 45 minutes down the road. Then I had it was number 1, number 2 was Arizona State, number 3 was Tennessee, number 4 was Michigan, 5 was Florida State. Not in that order. Those were actually that order of the visits that I took. So my mom is like really, really pushing for me to go to Cal Berkeley. They got a great school.
Right.
You can get a great education there. I'm looking on the campus. I'm like, it's my first time on a college campus. I ain't never been on a plane before, none of that. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking at the campus. I'm like, oh, this campus is, it's nice. Then I get to Arizona State, and I'm like, and to see the weight room and the team and the facilities and the stadium and the locker room and the campus. I'm like, okay, this is 2 different places. Yeah. Arizona State was cracking.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I might, and my high school quarterback was there, so I'm like, oh man, this might be it. Then I get to Tennessee, and this is before the internet, before Al Gore invented the internet, 1998. I'm walking down the we're walking from the team facility to the stadium, doing the Vol Walk to go have dinner with the coaches.
Right.
No name tags or nothing. I'm walking down the street. There's thousands of fans out there. Yeah. This is the biggest weekend. We had John Henderson we had most of the people that signed in my class. I'm walking down the street, right? and people are yelling my name and screaming at me, and I'm like, man, what? I'm like, okay, these people love football like me, so I need to get there, right?
Right.
Long story short, I told my mom was really pushing me to go to Cal. She was like, okay, for Arizona State. She didn't want me going all the way to Tennessee to play football or to, to go to school. And so I told my mom, I said, Mom, as a 16-year-old little boy, I told my mom, I said, which it took some nuts for me to do that. I said, Mom, I'm going to get an education no matter where I go. I'm going to get my diploma no matter where I go. But I'm not going to school to go to school. I'm going to school to play football, but I'm going to get my education, which is why I ended up going to Tennessee, because the SEC was super cracking at the time. The Pac-12 or the Pac-10 at the time was okay-ish. And so I'm like, I got to go to Tennessee. Right. So I get to Tennessee. I'm going back to everything that I remember as a kid. I'm like, oh, I can pick anything I can study. I'm like, okay, I'm doing astronomy. I sat in there the first day, and I seen all these numbers popping up. Like, you see my man on the meme where all the numbers is popping up. I was like, oh God, I got up in the middle of the class. I was like, I can't be here. I started sweating.
It's different.
I was like, I got to get out. So I got out. Like you, for 2 years, I was like, what am I going to study? Because I didn't know. I was interested in making it to the NFL. I wasn't interested in like picking a major at the time. But then I stumbled upon psychology like right before I had to pick a major, and it was like everything that I was doing as a kid, but just didn't know it was an actual science for that.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh man, let me jump in this. And then that's when I like really my last year and a half. So I left school early. My last year and a half was really I didn't get to delve into it as much as I wanted to. But once I left school, the only things I was doing every day when I would leave Saints facility, leave practice, I would leave the facility. On my way home, I would stop in the shooting range. I would shoot for like 2 hours. Then I would go to Barnes and Noble.
Talking about basketball or guns?
Guns.
Oh, okay.
Guns. Oh yeah. I was like Rambo.
Second Amendment. I hear you.
Yeah. I was like, make sure you read that book too.
Yeah. He brought me a gift, man. So we'll talk about it in a second. But he brought me a gift.
But yeah. So long story short, man, I ended up. I would leave the facility. I would go to the gun range for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I would go to Barnes and Nobles and pick up a bunch of psychology books. And then that was all. And then I'd get home and read them, and that was my circle every day that I would do my whole rookie year. And like you said, as I got older, and especially around 2008, 2009, once I got closer to 30, and I kind of figured, like, oh, I can't do this for 20 more years like I thought I'd be able to do. And then I started, then the brain the light bulb went on and started clicking again, and I'm like, okay. All right, so back into the psychology mode and wanting to learn more.
It's such a rare thing though, because when you look, I mean, you've seen it. Some of your NFL peers, where at the tail end of their career, they hang on, and not only do they hang on, they just don't know which way to go.
Exactly.
And I'm talking to guys now like who are active, who are just like, man, this football is my life, man. You try to convince them like, I understand it has been your life, but bro, like you have to start looking at things in a broader sense, because this shit is, one, it's not that important, and two, it's fleeting. It's gonna go so fast. So, I mean, as you transition out of and you're doing independent studies, which I feel like is the best way to spark interest, without a doubt, right? Because that's where I'm at right now. So how far did you take that into your NFL career, as far as like? Because I got lost in NFL life a little bit. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh man, I mean, look, man, you literally toss down that tunnel, and how it's like crabs in the bucket, man. It's hard to get out that thing. Man. It's hard to get out.
It's interesting, man, because I've never really been a super party guy. I've never been, but it's like you come from these circumstances where you have no opportunities and nothing available to you, and then you are thrust into this. Everywhere you go, people know you, and then you have what seems at the time like an unlimited amount of resources,
right? And
so you're just young, wild, and reckless. And so I dodged a lot of bullets. I dodged a lot of bullets, man. One of the things that we talked about it before the podcast, that I asked if I could bring it up, but one of the things that it's really hard, like when you're in that lifestyle. I'm not saying this is the cause of it, but I'm saying, but when you're in that lifestyle, a lot of bad decisions can get made.
No doubt.
A lot of bad decisions can get made, and you were a part of a situation that was like so unfortunate, and the way you walked away from it to me was super admirable, and that's why I prefaced this conversation with me asking if I could talk about it, because it's such a personal. People were affected by it, man. So if you could kind of set the stage of like what exactly happened and what has transpired since then.
Yeah. So I I end up speaking to NFL teams. I've done working on some stuff with the NBA. I've done some stuff for the NHL, and I go and speak at colleges and some high schools. So what I tell them is the gist of my message is to be aware of your everyday decision making.
Right.
Because the final decision that put me in the position to where I was driving under the influence was not a one-time decision.
Right.
These were decisions that were built up over time. And so I always talk to them about, being aware. If you're aware of your everyday decisions, then you will, even the little ones, you know what I'm saying? Because those are the ones that can kind of creep up on you. For instance, like I tell them that when I was in school, guys would get together, go to someone's house, we'd have drinks, we would go out to the club and have more drinks, and then we'd come home. And there was never any accidents, there was never any negative repercussions from those decisions, right? And so we knew it was right. I mean, we know right from wrong. We knew it was wrong, right? But when you make those decisions and you continue to make them, and there's no negative repercussions, then it reinforces you on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
It reinforces to you that that's not a bad decision, even though consciously you know that it's wrong.
That's deep, though.
You know what I'm saying? So I tell them to be aware of those everyday decisions, because I was doing that in college, just like all my other teammates were.
Yeah,
because
I did the
you
same.
know what I mean?
I did the same thing.
So I tell them, and there's a wild statistic that the CDC has, the Center for Disease and Control Prevention, prevention and control. It is there's an X amount of times that you drive under the influence before you get pulled over.
Yeah.
You know that number?
Nah.
Take a guess. Just take a shot in the dark.
I'm not gonna go from personal experience. I'm gonna go from the average.
Yeah. What you would think the average time is?
I'd probably say like 10.
8 times that.
I was close.
80.
Okay.
No,
It's
80. 10 times that.
Holy
80.
shit.
Right. That's the yeah. When I heard that, I'm like, damn, I did the Alonzo. You know when Alonzo was looking, he was shaking his head and he was like, you know that meme when Alonzo, that's when I'm like, damn, I'm like, well, man, I'm like,
wow.
You looking at all the times when cats would always go out, and then you're doing it in college and you get to the league. For the cats that make it to the league, you get to the league and you're doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And again, it's reinforced to you because there's no negative repercussions from that. So
I could piggyback that, because there was about 3 times, because I went through an extremely hard time in my off the field in the NFL, because I was going through some personal issues. I was married and I shouldn't have been married. I did it for sometimes, like my man always says, like, sometimes doing the right thing ain't the right thing.
Yeah.
So I got married for the wrong reasons, man. Trying to portray and be somebody who I wasn't,
right,
alongside a whole bunch of personal things, but just trying to do something that I was nowhere near ready to uphold the responsibilities of being a husband. So I self-medicated. I drank a lot, and a lot of it was what you just explained. So we would go out, and it was so normal. It's just
right,
normal. We'll go out to team dinners, and guys will have drinks and shots, and you get in your car and everything's fine, because it just never happened. What woke me up was, no pun intended, what woke me up was, and I'm very appreciative, because this changed my life. I fell asleep at the wheel at a stoplight, and I woke up, and a police officer he was like, "Hey man, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was literally right down the street from my house. And it's like, "Where you at?" Because they obviously knew who I was.
Right.
And I got lucky, because some police officers want to look out for you, some police officers do not.
Right.
I got super lucky, and it took me home, and I was like, "Yo, I'm never doing this again," because that could have tarnished everything. Because there's no, you
just don't know how it could have ended.
Yeah, I could have hurt somebody.
Right.
Like, it was just, I'm sleeping at a stoplight. I was like, "Yo, I need a wake up call," and that's when I really turned my life around. I refuse to drink and drive now, like, because there's Uber now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like going through that process, man, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think it's an important vantage point that you have. And you went through like a court case, and I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about or whatever, but you went through like a court case where because you hit a guy and you were under the influence, and this was exactly what you're talking about. Like at a subconscious level, you're making these decisions, and after a while they start not to be bad decisions, because after a while you can have 2 or 3 drinks, 4 drinks, and you're like, I feel fine.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't even matter if you feel fine.
Right.
It's what's your blood alcohol level.
Exactly.
Like, you could be totally functioning,
Right.
but if you're behind that wheel and something happens, you're accountable.
Right.
And so that's what scared the shit out of me. It was like, I don't want to not be here for my kids for a good night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And so, when you thinking about what the consequences are, more so than what the positive experience or whatever, what kind of fun you're going to have. When you understand the consequences outweigh no matter what kind of fun you're about to have, when you understand that, then that's when you start thinking on a different level. That's when you can start making decisions based on the consequences, and not thinking about how much fun you're going to have or what you're going to get into, whatever. And I know that, I always have to remind people, like if we're out or whatever, and you even like before you go out, you try to say, okay, are you gonna have drinks? If you are, then we just jump in an Uber. And I can't drive, so for me it's like I'm jumping in Ubers and walking all the time anyway.
Right.
And so what I try to remind people, and they'll be like, if they say something like, oh, I'm just 5 minutes down the road, I'm just 10 minutes down the road, I was like, I was too.
Yeah.
Like literally, I was too. 5 minutes out of my garage. You know what I'm saying? So there is no excuse for driving under the influence. You know what I mean? Like, especially like you said, it's Uber, it's Lyft now. So
I definitely do Lyft, not Uber.
Yeah, no doubt. There's too many ways of transportation for you to get around without having to drive under the influence. It's just not worth it. You just never know what can come. What can come up. People always say like, I'm fine, but okay, what about the driver next to you?
Yeah,
you know what
you
I'm
might
saying?
get in a wreck and it's not your fault.
You know what I mean?
But
then if you're under the influence, you know what I mean? Then you are going to be held accountable for it. And that's the way the law works. And so one of the things, and I've been doing a lot of work on this. I was in Miami in December at a conference speaking on this. One of the many people that were there, and there was a chief of police from somewhere in South Florida, and he made a great point that not a lot of law enforcement make in this country, not just from a driving under the influence standpoint, but just in general laws and law enforcement, is that he said we can't arrest ourselves, or we can't arrest our way out of this problem. You can't. He said, there's got to be a treatment program.
That's deeper.
You know what I mean?
That goes to a deeper point about a lot of things.
That's what I'm saying.
So.
You know what I mean? So,
Wow.
And so when he said that, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, because I had met a young lady that had driven under the influence like 8 times, was in and out of prison, lost her kids for a long time, and now she's out and doing good work. And it was, I was listening to her story, and she listened to my story, and it's just it's crazy when you it's wild when you think about it, man. That people, and again, for her, our situations were different, but her situation, she needed help, man.
Yeah.
And all those times she was arrested, and that now they're talking about programs where instead of them sending you to jail, they just monitor you for a couple weeks, and you have to go to these programs and things like that. And so it's like in this country, we have we look at drug abuse, drug addiction, and we look at mental health as criminal issues. There ain't many other countries in the world that not developing countries that do that. Right. You know what I'm saying? You look at some of the stuff that some of these Eastern European and these Nordic countries are doing, man, with clean air and their marijuana laws. They're way ahead of us. And Martin Luther King actually made a great point. He was in one of his speeches, I think it was the 3 Evils of Society speech, where he basically said, there's a Western arrogance, and he essentially meant America and at the time, the UK, but specifically America. He said there's a Western arrogance that we have everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them. And that's deep, man. Because when people say, oh, we should do it, like we should do, certain mental health issue laws like they do in Sweden or like they do in Norway. And it's like, nah, we're America. We can do it better. We can figure out a way to do it better, and we haven't.
Yeah, that's a big problem with, I think, America in general, is they confuse the bravado that they have with pride, with like a sense of pride.
Right.
And I think in doing so, it's so dangerous because it's kind of like what you were talking about, like the tribalism aspect of life is you start to feel and impose your morality on the world. And I get in this argument all the time with like religious people. It's hard, if you pin down any kind of morality as objective, that is then giving you the incentive and the credentials to judge and then initiate like a certain standard of a way of life that is merely your opinion, but you think it's objective. And this is, I mean, that's my problem with religion in general, but not to go down that rabbit hole. Tribal, and I always say nationalism is a disease, man.
Oh, no doubt.
It is a
No doubt.
disease. My sincere apologies. We had some technical difficulties where we lost part of the conversation, where we lose the context to this next segment. And that context is on March 14th, 2009, Donte was driving in Miami early in the morning and struck Mr. Mario Reyes and killed him. He was 59 years old. He explained in detail the night leading up to that morning and afterwards. He's extremely remorseful. It was a powerful moment. I'm extremely upset that we lost it, but we lost it. And I wanted to give my respects to the Reyes family as well as Donte Stallworth, because it was for all parties involved to move on the way that they did was extremely valiant and admirable in my opinion. So I wanted to give you guys context about what we were talking about. Once again, I'm extremely apologetic, upset that we lost that part of the conversation, but we had a really good conversation, so I hope you guys can enjoy the rest of it because it was a good one. It's kind of doubling back on what became of the you before and after the incident that happened where a man's life was taken, but the growth that you've experienced from the criticism to the self. Probably you hard on yourself than anybody else was harder on you, because that's just the kind of person you are. So like what kind of, or what the growth from there is like. I'm trying to dig at like what not inspired the growth, because that's a fork in the road, man. Like to a lot of people's life, and you took the honorable route and said I'm gonna fix me. So like, how did that explain that growth process?
It was definitely a process. I think looking back at the time, after it happened, and I went in my back seat and grabbed my phone, called 911. I got out of my car, tried to tell them where we were, and by the time I got over to where Mr. Reyes was in the street, a police officer was already tending to him, and so I got off the phone with 911 and was speaking to him, and the whole time, they never like put me in handcuffs. They checked me to make sure I didn't have weapons on me or anything, but they put me in the back of the police car because people started taking pictures and everything, and so they put me back in the back of the police car. And as you can imagine, like there's a million things like running through my head, but the number one thing was I was concerned about the man that I had just hit.
Right.
And I kept asking the police officers, the whole time we were out there, like, how's he doing? Like, can you give me any updates? And, they just said that, we'll give you an update when we hear something. And kept saying it. And I figured, okay, now they're just BSing me now. Like, they know something either way and they're not telling me. And then they waited until I got there. I waived my Miranda rights, and they waited until I got to the police station to tell me that Mr. Reyes had passed. He didn't make it. I thought that was kind of shady because, how police officers operate. They try to get you in an emotional state before you give a statement. So, and I understood all that, but I didn't care about that, man. I was so like hurt and heartbroken that I played a major part in someone losing their life. You know what I'm saying? And I had never been in a fight before. I get along with everybody unless you're a white supremacist or a Nazi. I don't get along with them, but
rightfully so.
You know what I mean? Like, I get along with everybody, man. And so, I was like deeply hurt by a decision that I made that didn't have to happen. So I went into this. I mean, it was just a blur, man. Like the next 48 hours was a blur. My mom came in town, all the way from California. And in about, I think 2 weeks from that day, I ended up, at the state attorney's request, police department's request, I ended up turning myself in. And I just, I posted bail after that. And then I came out and made my first statement to the public. And I essentially said, that I have faith in the justice system, but I was like, there's no excuse for, what happened. I should not have been on the road, is essentially what I said. And then I got in the car and went home. And I don't remember if it was that same day or the next day, but my attorney told me through the family's attorney that, and I hadn't heard from them at all, I wasn't expecting to hear from them at all, but they reached out to my attorney through their attorney and said that they appreciated the way I handled everything, and that completely like shocked me. I'm like, how can they appreciate anything that I've done? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm responsible for them not having their family member here, and that honestly, that really kind of began the healing process. Was the fact that they were able to forgive me, because I had to forgive myself first. You know what I mean? 'Cause there's a guilt that comes along with that.
Explain that aspect of it, because I think a lot of people that go through traumatic issues in general, they never get there. They never get to that point where it's like, I gotta forgive me, because you can't walk around with this guilt, because it's just gonna lead to more and more bad decisions.
Exactly.
So explain that process. What do you mean by I had to forgive myself?
Yeah. So, my family's, and especially my mother's, Christian background. We would be in church all the time. My mother is, I call her super Christian. She's in church every Sunday. She's in Bible study every week. She's, at all the programs at church and everything. And she, as kids, she made us go. And as we got a little older, she didn't really force it on us, force going to church on us. But I tried to still keep some of the values and things that I'd learned. And so I knew that spiritually, I had to get to a place where I could try to forgive myself and try to, obviously you take responsibility. My mom always taught me in everything that, in life, from even as a kid, she always taught all her children to take responsibility for your actions. That was one of the things. And the other thing she always told us was action speaks louder than words. Mm-hmm. Those are two of the main things I remember my mom always used to tell us. And so, once the Reyes family, after a couple weeks, and when I made my statement, when they came out, or when they spoke to my attorney and told me that they appreciated the way I handled everything, that helped big time. And again, I wasn't expecting that at all. And that really helped me more to forgive myself, the fact that they were able to forgive me.
Right. Is there any correspondence between you and them now, or
I'm not allowed to still? Like, I mean, it's it's a lifelong thing. Court orders that I'm not allowed to, but we'd have to communicate through attorneys. Right. And whenever I like, if I go speak, or if I'm writing like an op-ed like for CNN or whatever, I always will give them a heads up first and let them know that I'm that I'm going to speak here and be talking about this. Are you okay? I clear it with them, to make sure that it's okay with them. Obviously, I don't want to do anything that they wouldn't be comfortable with.
Right.
But they've pretty much given me a green light, and the way that I was coming out from all that, I would say there was a process where I understood that I was facing between 4 to 15 years. The minimum was 4 years, the maximum was 15 years, and the average in the state of Florida was 8 years. And I really, people were asking me about football and all that, and I'm like, I'm not tripping on football.
Care
you know
about
what I'm
that
saying?
right now.
I'm not tripping on football. I'm there's nothing I could do to bring Mr. Reyes back, but to honor his memory by obviously not only never driving under the influence again, but to be in a position to where I can help others learn from my experience, and not just driving under the influence, but just life experience in general, and hopefully it can help other people make better decisions than I did that day, because it didn't just happen. Like we said, it didn't just happen. As a fork in the road decision. This was built up over time in a belief system.
Right.
That driving under the influence was okay, and I knew going into that to that night. When I headed out, I knew I was going to have a couple drinks. I was heading to, this was a Friday night, and that Sunday I had to, fly back to Cleveland because we were starting our off-season program. So, the turn-up time was over. I just knew that I was going to go there and have a few drinks and then come home, wake up the next morning, pack, go eat breakfast and pack, and then, head to Cleveland and get ready to start the season. And it didn't turn out like that. Because of the decision I'd made a number of other times to drive under the influence. Even though I left the club, went home, fell asleep, and then woke up and went to go eat breakfast, and all those things. And so and I didn't have I wasn't like turning up at the club, so it wasn't even in my mind the alcohol aspect of it. But the family really helped me a lot, man. They helped me get through it, and then the NFL put me in the substance abuse program, and I ended up meeting with Dr. Ferriello in South Florida. And that's something, man, that's a whole nother dynamic to the story, is that I've always felt like I've been a tough player, and mentally tough and physically tough, and then that's what we're coached to do, right? You never want to show your opponent weakness. You don't want to show them any weakness. You don't want to show them that you're tired. Get your hands off your knees. All these things, you know what I'm saying? All these things they're drilling into us.
Like I'm tired. What are we playing this game?
right. You know what I mean? So all these different things that are being pushed to have you become a top flight athlete, from a mental toughness standpoint and a physical toughness standpoint. When the NFL told me that they wanted me to see a therapist, I'm like I'm good. I got my family. I'm pray about it. I'm gonna meditate on it and try to clear my head and work through it that way. But it was number one. It was the pushback from being a football player, an NFL player. Like I don't need. I'm tough. I got this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Naturally, that was the wall that was built up. But then also too, it's also the stigma of mental health issues, is that you want me to go see a shrink? I'm not. You think I'm crazy? You think I got something going on? You know what I mean? So, and that's just the stigma that society has, not on everyone. You know what I mean? So those two things at play really made me not want to go see Dr. Ferriello, and I didn't trust him. He worked because he was getting paychecks from the NFL. You know how that go.
Yeah.
But we developed a relationship, and I realized that even though he was working, getting paid for the NFL, he'd done his own thing personally. So I felt comfortable with him over meeting with him, a few times, and opened up to him, and he really helped me out a lot, man. And that was a part of the process too, because it made me realize that if I had it my way, I would have never went to go see dude.
Because you majored in psychology. That's the interesting thing.
Right.
Is my hesitation for ever going to go see a therapist was the premeditate. Well, I knew what mental games they were going to try to play with me, right? And so when I'm going into, I just felt like it was a sham. I was falling for it. Like I can address these issues on my own, and maybe you can help me with this. But I think the psychology behind seeing a therapist is more so on the surface, honestly. I don't think it's as deep as it. Like, I never really went to therapy and had this epiphany, like, oh shit, that's why I do stupid shit.
Yeah.
It's more so of just having another human being sit across from you, and you empty out your soul. And I don't see soul in a religious context, but you empty out everything that you are, and having somebody across from you saying, "Hey, man, it's okay."
But having a professional do it, right? Because we did that, and you're right, and that's
because a bunch of the homies can do that.
No doubt. You know what I mean?
Do.
Right. You know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny you brought that up, because that's the point that I always say, and trying to negate the feelings of that stigma of like needing to see someone, right? So I say we do it all the time. You talk to your homeboys, you talk to your significant other, you talk to your family. Everybody got somebody that they talk to on a regular about their problems. But this person is a professional.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Even though they don't know you like the other people know you, but they're a professional. So it's the same thing as sitting across from another human being and emptying out your soul and giving them all this, and then they can figure out, okay, they looking at you like you an omelet or something. And then, you know what I mean? And you got all the little items out there, and you pour it out.
I think it's the judgmental aspect of it too, because like if you sit here and say to somebody like, "Yo, I really like sleeping with 7 women at one time," somebody gonna look at you like, 7, fam? Like, you know what I mean? Where they're gonna look at you like, okay, where does these desires come from? They're not gonna look at you like you're an asshole. They're gonna look at you. I'm not saying I like to sleep with 7 women, but I'm saying like that judgmental aspect of it is like it's an extremely point. To your point earlier of substance abuse and like, because we vilify so many characteristics that are normal. Right. It's a normal desire is normal, but we vilify it so much. That's one of the reasons why I despise religion, is because it vilifies natural human behavior. Where if we can just address these issues and then work through them, like I don't think we're monogamous beings. I just don't. But there's somebody that you want to share your life with. This is a sacrifice you have to make. Right. But it's a sacrifice because the urge is in you. You have testosterone. It's a chemical. It's in your body. So you have to work through those urges and understand your choices and consequences and all of these things. So therapy helped me tremendously. And I advise anybody out there who is even if you're not going through something, just go. It's a little mental health checkup. You know, go get your blood pressure took. Go see a therapist. It's amazing. This is interesting to me though. You went from that traumatic experience of playing in the NFL, continuing to play in the NFL, probably getting more backlash than anybody who's ever played in the NFL. One of them. But then you go into the shark-infested waters of politics, which is insane to me. Yeah. So what spurred that move? Because politics is heavy, man.
Yeah, it is. I've always liked to mix it up, man. Like I wouldn't mind like crackbacking on linebackers and all that, you know, to let Deuce McAllister get a toss. Like I'm all down for that. You know what I'm saying? Man, I benched 450 at Tennessee. You know what I mean?
Like, you still in? It's crazy.
A little bit, man.
I shook you up and I was like, hold on, you got that grown man farmer strength, bro. That's not from lifting weights.
You know what's funny, man, is like I've always loved like lifting weights and training and all that, and so. Once I retired, it took me, I probably didn't do anything. I probably stopped doing everything for like 3 weeks or 3 months.
I was like 3.
Yeah, no, like,
you didn't give yourself enough time, bro. I took about a year and some change off. I took about a year and some change. I'm just now getting like probably like this last month where I was like, okay, I'm getting back in shape, and I feel way better. By the way.
You do, man. You do feel so much better.
Like the mental clarity that comes with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
so I ended up like. Once I retired, I'm like, I stopped working out. I stopped training because I didn't need to, right? And I got to the Super Bowl in New York. I was doing media row and all that, and I remember that morning I got out of the shower, and I'm about to get dressed and going over, and I'm looking at my body in the mirror. I'm like, I'm looking like a little skinny Homer Simpson, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, that ain't me, though. I'm like, that ain't me. That ain't who I want to be. I've seen too many of the homies, man, once they retire, just let it go. And I'm like, that's not going to be me, man. Like, I try to, you know what I mean? So that day after I finished media row, I went and bought me some shoes, some running shoes, and I went and ran like 5 miles in Central Park. First time ever ran, I downloaded a running app.
That back was tight. I know that back.
I felt like an old man,
bro. That first, but see, it's an important thing, because that first day when somebody decides I'm gonna work out and change my life, it is intimidating, because I mean, and this is coming from 2 professional athletes who take. I took a year and some change off of working out. I know people out there have taken years off from that, and they want to get their life started, and then that first day is like, man, I can't do this. I remember I was watching Patrice O'Neal. He's a comic. Rest in peace, man. That boy was one of the GOATs. But he was saying, man, I'm not doing this shit. He said, I was working my ass off, doing my thing, sweating, and then I didn't see nothing. He said, I gotta do this shit tomorrow.
Right.
Absolutely,
right.
you have to. But
right.
it's just that getting in that routine.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was. I know people like to say, you know, plus size people, or, you know, he's getting comfortable in your body. Like, man, fuck that. I'm not an advocate of that. I believe strongly in clarity of thought has everything to do with how you take care of yourself physically. They coincide with each other, man. If you eating burgers, eating like shit, and drinking and I'm not saying you can't have a good time or have a good meal, but it adds up after a while and it changes the way you think.
Right.
I'm a perfect example of that. Like, it changes the way you think. But I got off on a huge tangent right there, man. But explain the transition from shark infested waters in the NFL to shark infested waters in politics.
Yeah, man. So I didn't know anything about I didn't know there was media beef.
Right.
Like I had no idea. Maybe it was, you know, me being naive, but you know, I was just when I was in the NFL, I'd get, you know, the Foreign Affairs magazine, I'd read Foreign Policy magazine, I'd get them sent to the team facilities and be reading them in the hot tub. You know what I'm saying? That was my outlet. I didn't really care about you know, much else other than like reading up on national security and foreign affairs. And so when I retired, and then I ended up, lucking up and catching a job with the Huffington Post in D.C. They brought me in to cover national security and foreign affairs, you know, under the politics umbrella. And, you know, right when they announced it, right when Arian Huffington announced it, all the conservative media comes out and they found some of my little old Bin Laden tweets from like 2009.
Man.
And they were like, he's a 9/11 truther and blah, blah.
But see,
right?
that's what I'm saying, like, to hop into that, because, like, politics is this weird, it's this weird arena where everybody fronts like they're perfect.
Man.
It's insanity.
Yeah,
and so for you to go from the NFL to politics.
Right. So here's the thing. So
was it just for your interest? And
oh, definitely. I was interested in it because I've been a news junkie anyway.
Right.
So, and most of the news that I was consuming was politics and specifically national security and foreign affairs. Right. And I would tweet about them. I've been tweeting about it since I was, on 2009. So
are you a 9/11 truther though? Just to put that
no.
Okay,
so,
okay,
but I used to be though.
Right.
I was, and I was under the impression that the whole what was the documentary Loose Change?
Yeah,
like and so moving forward, from 2009 to 2014, bro, they came out and attacked me, right? And it was like. And I felt so bad because I'm like, I'm coming with a team mentality, and I didn't give a fuck that they were talking shit about me and some of the shit that I had said. Number one, because I knew I had grown from that, but not only did I know it, I tweeted about it constantly. Right. So I'm like, if you motherfuckers are digging up this shit from 2000, these tweets from 2009, how the fuck didn't you see these tweets from a year and 2 years?
They don't care.
And that allowed me to give them a swift kick in the ass when I came back and was like, I used to believe that, but I've stated I was on Mother Jones. I did an interview with Mother Jones, specifically, saying otherwise and detailing why I thought this way and learning from James Bamford's The Shadow Factory. Mm-hmm. That's another great book on the NSA and kind of their role leading up to, during, and after 9/11. Which is a wild book, man, and it really that book really brought me out of the rabbit hole of the 9/11 conspiracy. But when that happened, I felt bad for the Huffington Post. I didn't give a fuck that they were attacking me. I felt bad for the team. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, shit. I was a free agent, and I just got here. Right. You know what I mean? And I'm already fucking up.
Taking
you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, damn. And I felt bad.
They're probably like, this happens all the time.
Yeah, and they, it was just a kind of like a quick little thing. And I did some interviews to kind of like reiterate what I had already said on Twitter. Like, and this was back in 2009. I had said these things, refuting that, and really refuting it like the last, leading up to that point in a year or two prior. And so I ended up writing like a 3,500 page 3,500 word piece on why 9/11 conspiracies and conspiracies in general in America, why are they still around? Like, why do people still believe in this? And it was crazy, man, because I ended up getting to talk to like a bunch of like world-renowned psychologists about the issue. So I was all in, right? And it's probably my favorite piece. But the one thing that from that, and I remember I was speaking to somebody from the Washington Post, and they asked me about it. And I'm like, man. I'm like, shit, I'm getting hit harder here than I was playing football. I ain't gonna get my shoulder pads and helmet. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's how I felt.
That's what I'm saying. You jumped in.
Right.
Politics is a dirty game, man. And that's why I was super surprised to see you make that jump. But when you made that jump, you did so very smooth. The transition was very smooth. Obviously, you're articulate and you're well versed in your opinions. Thank your Lord that you added that 9/11 thing.
Yeah.
But that's an important piece you wrote. Is why conspiracies are even sexy to people.
And then and there have been actual conspiracies, right? There was MK Ultra. There was COINTELPRO.
Right. That was real.
You know, the guy that has his name on the FBI building right now, J. Edgar Hoover, went to his grave believing that Martin Luther King was working with the Russians.
Right.
Which kind of, you fast forward to today,
right,
and it's all like Russia.
Right.
And it's just interesting how things.
MK Ultra was a real. I thought that was another crackpot. I mean, I'm ignorant.
No, what they were drugging. U.S. Army, the CIA was drugging Army cadet or whatever. I don't know what position they were, but
right.
They were drugging some of the Army soldiers and giving them PCP and all that, and it is
okay. I heard that. So I thought, because I must have just watched the wrong YouTube conspiracy video, but I thought MK Ultra was like some mind control.
Yeah. That's what they were trying to like figure out, how they could put them in an altered state where they could make them do these things.
Oh, so they were experimenting with. I heard that they used to do it with LSD.
Yeah, I'm sorry, LSD, not PCP. Right?
Yeah, so I mean that's what I didn't know that was the program was called MK Ultra.
Yeah,
because like I saw some who's the weatherman, the black dude that works on Good Morning America.
Yeah,
Brokaw. Is it Tom Brokaw? No, that's not him.
I know you're talking about. I can't. I got
Al
his
Roker.
face.
Al Roker.
Yes.
So Al Roker,
yes.
like he kind of just like he spaced out on camera, right? So he kind of spaced out, and they were like MK Ultra, MK Ultra, and I was like, I don't know, bro.
Yeah,
that's what I heard. Nah, that makes sense.
But but then the interesting thing too is that I knew that. And again, I didn't give a shit, and people were like, some of the teammates were coming up to me, fellow journalists were coming up to me and were like, "I'm so sorry this is happening." I'm like, I
not at all. Not at all.
I'm like, I genuinely felt bad for them,
right.
but I didn't give a fuck. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what they say. I'm like, I'm here. I'm an undrafted rookie.
Exactly.
I'm trying to learn. You know what I'm saying? And you get undrafted rookies that come out and fucking ball. You know what I mean?
That's why.
Like you did.
But this is why corporations love ex-athletes, because that mentality that you had right there. They take that in a professional setting.
Transferable skills.
100%.
Transferable skills.
It's a rare skill set to have somebody say, okay, look, I know this isn't my lane. I'm an undrafted rookie. I know I got to earn my stripes here, so I'm ready to put in this work.
Right.
Some people just are entitled.
And you embrace the grind because you got to grind. You got to go through OTAs. You got to work out. You got to go through mini camp.
Yeah.
Then when you get home, even though you're not at the facility, you still got to train because when you get to training camp, it's going down.
Yeah.
And then you hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
Then 4 weeks, you playing preseason games.
Point in case, I saw you were on the spin zone with Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
But to go from interning at Huffington Post to then be
that was one of his last shows, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. But to be a guest on Bill O'Reilly, I mean, he was established in the political world, right, in the political stratosphere. You have to know your shit, right? Even if you're not a conservative. If you don't have conservative ideologies, you have to know your shit in order to combat any kind of idea that a conservative has.
Right.
And that is one of the biggest voices in conservatism at that time. So to be on the show, you had to know your shit, which is why I got the most respect. But I don't ever want to get into politics that deep, right? Because I tell you why, man. I was on Pod Save America the other day, and I was talking to one of the cats, and they're a super liberal podcast.
Yeah.
Great fans, fucking amazing boost they gave us, man. Much love. But I was talking to him, and it's like,
you remember who was it? Tommy or John?
I can't remember who I was talking to.
Okay.
But anyway, once you start down that political rabbit hole, you have to become a student of history.
Oh,
right?
no, that's it.
Because the reason why we're in Iraq has everything to do with this, that, and the other. Then it just goes so many different ways, and it's a river, and it's just they break off into streams, and it's like you have to cover all of those points, and I just don't have the interest. Like you have to, as a responsible American citizen that votes, I have to stay abreast of current political affairs. But I don't want to go down that, like, I don't want to know what happened in 1964. And,
see,
you know what I mean?
I'm all about, I love history. History is like, my dad served in the army. He went to the DMZ. He was in Korea. He was in Germany. He was, working with NATO in Germany and shit. And, so he'd like tell me all these stories. And I think that, growing up, like I was always big into science and history. Those are like two of my favorite, probably more history was really like my favorite subject. So just what you just said is exactly what happened to me, and exactly what sent me down that political rabbit hole was when after we lost the Super Bowl in 2007 to the Giants, the year we were undefeated until the last game.
Happens.
It happens. And so I'm back in Miami, and I was staying in a hotel for a few weeks, and I just remember going on YouTube and like looking at this young senator from Illinois, good looking dude with a weird name, Barack Hussein Obama. I'm like, yeah, you'll never be president, dude. Not with that name and not with that skin color.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You'll never be president, bro.
I thought the same thing.
But then I started listening to him, and I'm like, okay, sound good. He articulate, got a good looking family. Wife is on point, stupid smart. Smarter than him. And I'm like, he's got all the exterior minus the Muslim name, minus the funny Muslim name, and minus a skin color. If he was a straight white male, I'm like, okay, he might be in there. The thing that tripped me out though, because when I saw that, I'm like, good luck to you, brother. But maybe my grandkids will see a black president. Right. And then when he started beating Hillary in some of these primaries, and then I'm like, hold on, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this dude? So I started researching him and seeing like he's Harvard, and I'm like, okay, well, all that's good and everything, but who is he learning from, that's giving him these ideas? Oh, he's learning from Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor in the 70s. What's he mostly known for? Oh, he was the one that really kind of started, along with the CIA, kind of started the program to fund the Mujahideen in Afghanistan when they were fighting the Russians.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh shit! And then one of his most famous quotes is when they asked him like right before 9/11, and they asked him, they said, do you regret help funding and training and all that, training the Mujahideen, who essentially turned into the Al Qaeda? Mm-hmm. And he said what's more important to the world, a bunch of stirred up Muslims or the end of the Soviet Union? He was like, I think he basically said like, I think history will, vindicate that decision. Right. And then, a couple years later, fucking Al Qaeda ran 2 planes into both the towers and then the Pentagon, and
that's the swirling rabbit hole that
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about history, so I had to learn. When I looking at Obama, I'm like, I had to learn who his main foreign policy and national security advisors were. It was Zbigniew Brzezinski was one of his top people, so I'm learning about him. Then I'm in a rabbit hole now. I'm like, shit, now I got to learn about the Mujahideen and why they were funded and all this, but I love that. I love history.
Then the Soviet Union.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a river, right?
So this is one of the things that I've tried to get into, but it's so multifaceted and it's so opinionated, which is the conflict between Palestine and Israel.
Yeah.
So like that's just so everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. I've tried. I've looked at documentaries. I've read certain books.
Yeah.
Put me on. But
I'm still learning too. I mean,
but the thing about the Palestinian and Israeli conflict is that it's hard to find an unbiased source.
Right.
So you'll have a side siding with Palestine saying this isn't their land, they don't belong here, and then you have a side with Israel saying this is their land, they belong here. So it's like it's hard for me to just look at that objectively and say this is the truth.
Right.
And that's why politics isn't like I said, I try to be responsible American and keep abreast of these things, but it's not hard science, right? Social science has everything to do with anecdotes. It has everything to do with subjectivity, right? So it's hard. It's the layer for truth is a little more shallow than it is for hard science.
Right. And so when people always ask me about like my ideology or what do I believe, I'm like, listen, man, I'm like, there's a great. I'm gonna pull it up because I got to pull this up. One of my favorite quotes. You would think that I would know about Heart if it's one of my favorite quotes.
Right. One of my favorite quotes I've written down.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me give me a minute.
No, you straight.
But it's I'm all about obviously America is the most powerful nation in the world, right? But and that leads people to believe that we can kind of just do whatever we want in the rest of the world, right?
Well, to me, the weird being an American, and maybe this is just because I'm a rational thinker. I think everybody thinks they're a rational thinker. I don't know, but being a rational thinker, I'm like, okay, we have military bases. Like in every fucking country, in every continent, everywhere. So we're basically the police of the world, and I know that kind of goes back to whom much is given, much is expected. But it's like we're spreading democracy as if democracy is the only way. I mean, I'm on the fence about that because I'm not a Marxist, but like when I read Karl Marx,
you communist,
yeah, exactly right. But when I read some of Karl Marx's ideas, I'm not it doesn't strike me as like this communist state. I don't think that's what he wanted. Tell me if I'm wrong. Because Marxism to me is basically saying this. Marxism says. The free market in what we have in America right now in a democratic society, basically, the worker has monetary incentive, but not necessarily emotional incentive. Right. So it creates an unstable people, which, I mean, if you look at our society, that is exactly what's going on right now. Right. I'm not saying capitalism is the root cause, but I think it plays a huge part because you have everybody thinking they can have this American dream when it's a crapshoot, man. But then you have Marxism. To me, basically says, do work that fulfills you, and that is more gratifying than any kind of monetary gain. And the what is the chord? There was another point he had that I forgot that is blanking on me right now. But I think to me that's what I pulled from Marxism is like do work that means something to you.
I think to me one of the most interesting aspects of America, even since its founding, is that capitalism is the end all be all. You can't. If you're an anti-capitalist, no matter what you are, you don't have to be a communist, you don't have to be a Marxist, you don't have to be anything else. But if you are anti-capitalist, then that means you are anti-American. Yeah. It means you are anti-democracy, means you are anti-Western. And so the conversation around that, to try to make people feel a certain way, feel treasonous, or feel like you're unpatriotic or un-American for speaking against the negative parts of capitalism, right. To me, that goes back to this whole trying to control people, and like you said, you trying to put people in a box of a way to think. During the 1950s, when during the Big Red Scare, and Joe McCarthy, who was a senator, who pretty much ran the whole Big Red Scare thing. Everything was communist. There were, I don't know, he said 200 and something members in the Communist Party. The next day he changed it to like 50, 57, something like that. It was a hysteria around that, and so then they drug people. Ronald Reagan, of course, he was snitching. They drug Ronald Reagan, or they put Ronald Reagan. He was he was an actor at the time, and he busted out some of his people who were anti-capitalist. Some of his colleagues in the media industry or in the film industry who were anti-capitalist and kind of like started some communist party things. Now, anti-capitalist sentiment went down during the 1950s because at the time the Big Red Scare and the communists were the worst thing in the world, right? After World War II. So the fact that the Communist Party like kind of went away and all these other anti-capitalist people, the conversation and the dialogue around that kind of died down because people were being prosecuted, because people were being shunned for believing that way. So to me, I think that's like one of the bigger problems. It's like we just automatically put ourselves in this capitalism box. And Martin Luther King, they always want to bring up Martin Luther King for all kind of reasons. It's like, oh, Martin Luther King wouldn't appreciate that, or he wouldn't have said this. Man, you and me both. And
stupid rhetoric.
And so what they always do is, Martin Luther King talked about it again in that same speech. It was one of my favorite speeches, 3 Evils of Society, where he says that people think that capitalism was kind of bred out of the goodness and the hard work of America. He's like, no, it was actually built on the backs of black slaves.
Yeah, they don't
in the whole Civil War and all that. You know what I mean? Like
there's an important reoccurring theme in capitalism. Like the reason why it has flourished the way it is it's slave labor, 100% slave labor.
Right.
I'm not a Marxist. Like I just know there's a middle ground, right?
Right.
There's a middle ground where capitalism and I don't know if it's Marxism, but
you just think there's a better way than what we're seeing right now, what we're living right now.
And I think it's all coming to a head, right? Because we live in an information age. So you look at cryptocurrency is kind of starting to like peek its head of like there's another way to view value, because right now the only reason why the dollar has any value is because we say it does.
Right.
There's no other, like it doesn't mean anything. It's not backed by gold like it used to be, and you keep printing money, and that's why inflation prices rise. So something's coming to a head where the market that we have right now is it's not sustainable, because it's basically fluff. It's basically us saying, it's the barter system on steroids, saying, right, I'll give you $20, and this $20 is $20 because we all agree it's $20, right? Okay, cool, it's $20. I had this dude, I had a fan on the podcast. His name was Tate Grealish. I always fuck that up. My bad, Tate. I was explaining to him this is what's interesting to me about communist rhetoric, or even people insulting people, calling them a communist. Yeah. Like the majority of the conservative right wing is Christian America, right? And if you look at communism, show me the difference between communism and heaven. Their ideology of what heaven is in the afterlife.
Don't get me started on the right wing in this country, man.
It's an interesting dynamic when you look at it. Like communism is viewed as this bad, awful, evil thing, and granted, there are evil people that operated under that territory or under that that guise of communism. But that doesn't necessarily mean the system itself is evil. Right. Like evil people can run a democratic system, right? I.e., America. So there are evil people, but the system itself they aspire to go to when they die, but they don't want to live that when they're alive. Right. You know what I mean? I can just imagine somebody going up to their Jesus and just being like, you know what, man? I think it's bullshit. Everybody gets the same. I should be able to work for my wings. How come he just got his? You know what I'm saying? Like it's a stupid concept. It's a dumb concept.
I mean, and you know, they use it to whatever benefit they can. I mean, there's things in the Bible that they pick and choose from, whether if it's LGBTQ issues or issues of helping the poor. It's it's such hypocrisy, man. That it's gross to just. Sometimes I even just gotta just go take a shower and wash DC off of me. Man.
So you're obviously a liberal thinker.
I would say I'm
moderate.
More. I'd like to think more like a progressive.
Progressive. Okay.
Yeah.
So what? Because I mean, obviously you have disdain for the right. I mean, I do too. But I have disdain for some of the left rhetoric
no
too.
doubt.
So
Bro,
what's something about the left that
this Russia shit.
Okay.
This whole everything is about Russia. Everything is about Russia. And
so you think it's a witch hunt
no. Look, Mueller is he's the man at what he does. He's had a career. He was the former FBI director, so he's had a career at investigating. Right now, with him being a special counsel. With him right now, what the investigation is essentially, it's like a slice of pizza where you starting off at the crust and boom, 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 you eating it backwards. You're taking the crust down, Carter Page and all these other people that you see getting indicted, all around.
That's what leads me to believe it's not a witch hunt.
No, I mean, and that's the thing is that, and I've talked to a number of members of Congress on the Democratic side and other Democratic operatives, and I'm telling them, I'm like, you can't put your whole 2018 and 2020 campaigns on this Russia shit. I said because that's you had the last election, the 2016 election, we had the two most hated candidates in the history of an election. Literally, there's facts, science behind that, right? There was no way that somebody like Donald Trump should have won the presidency of the United States.
Yeah.
So the Democrats, why did they lose? Or in their minds, why did they lose? Because Russia, helped Donald Trump. At worst, he colluded. At best, they had the bots and all that shit and the WikiLeaks and all that. Okay. But here's the point I'm making. If you're looking at all that, right, you got all that. To me, that was a small piece of the pie. Hillary didn't go to Pennsylvania. She didn't go to Michigan. She didn't go to Wisconsin. Those three, if she would have won those three states, two of those three states, she would have won the election. Those
are showing up would have.
This is the thing. She thought that she was gonna just get because since the mid '80s, those have been Democratic states.
So I mean, are people that
at least in the presidential election?
Yeah, but are people that fickle? I mean, I'll answer my question by
people
saying
want
yes.
Trump out of office. The Democrats want him out of office, so it's got to be about Russia.
No. What I'm saying is, are people that fickle to where they'll say, "I was gonna vote for Hillary Clinton, but because she didn't come to the state, I'm not going to anymore,"
because they feel like she didn't care about them now. But this
is why who was it? There was a philosopher that said this. I want to say it was Hume. Don't quote me on that. But he was basically saying that I think it was Socrates. Socrates hated democracy, and the reason why he hated democracy was because what you're doing is you're giving the everyday man the power to enact laws and shape society for the future of a society. But the problem is the majority of the public isn't informed. Right. So if your vote is fickle enough to change because a president didn't come speak at a rally, which rallies are just jerk shows anyway.
Yeah, but
sit there and
no doubt. But this is the point that I'm making, Aaron. It's like it's a combination of things, right? It's like it's also the fact that she was a corporate Democrat, right? And at the same time, when Trump, even though he is a part of the elites, he came out and was like, this is what she's done and what she's doing. She took all this money from Wall Street, after she left the State Department, she did all this. She's the elite. She don't care about y'all. I care about the working person. I remember the
campaign vividly.
And so the people that were in these states, they like shit. Like Hillary didn't even come here. She don't give a fuck about us. Trump actually talking about I need motherfucking money. So Trump is actually talking about bringing that money.
Shout out to Socrates, because that's exactly what he was talking about. Like that shit swayed you, like the average American is looking at, like, there was an uprising, there was a populist kind of movement right during 2016, and when you bring in a corporate Democrat
and you got to pick between a corporate Democrat and, as my man Jeremy Scahill said, fascist minus the little mustache, then we got to fix our problem. We got to fix our two-party system problem.
100%. That I don't even know if the majority of people,
and they blame the third party too. By the way, they blaming all all that, and I fought back on that so hard. And people were like, you must be a Jill Stein fan, and I'm like, nah. I'm actually not a fan of the two-party system. We need to have we got to get this money out of our politics. We can't have them have major corporations lobbying on behalf of their interests and not the interests of the American people, where they are. That's why
the internet is so important. You're 100% right. That's why the internet is so important, because I mean, think about it. When we were growing up, you were never into politics. Like it just wasn't part of our life. Like maybe some parents out there like put their kids up on it, but like you really don't get into politics till like your 20s, mid 20s, 30s. That's when you start getting into politics. But this election made people, the general public, more aware of politics, right? So now they're looking into more things. So like the gap is widening between right and left, but I feel like there is there's a middle ground that is an untapped market that needs to change, and there needs to not be any more Democrat and Republican party. Like I'm with you. I think that shit is done.
Yeah, and this is the thing too, is that you're talking about that middle ground, and it may not be the exact middle ground, but no. I'm talking about, but what I'm about to say is, there were a lot of people who went from two-time Obama supporters and voters, in the presidential election, to Trump supporters. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it was a significant amount of people that did that. It was a significant amount of people who, after Bernie didn't get the Democratic nomination, and they were like, I'm not voting for Hillary, so fuck, I guess I'm going to vote for Trump because I hate Hillary. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And Trump is talking about fighting for the common person. Now, of course, most of us knew it was bullshit, but 63 million Americans believed otherwise. But they, at the end of the day, when you got a system where you can only choose from two of the most hated, two of the most, I don't want to say, I hate using that word. I hate using hate. When you got two of the most unpopular candidates in the history of the country, and it's, that one of them is going to be president. You've got to that's your choice. Now the third,
there should be a vote of like, are these two candidates? Are these representative of the United States public opinion? And there should be a vote, yes, no, or other options, and then recast the vote. Like, why are we playing dice with the future of the country? That makes no fucking sense, because some old white dudes from 17 whatever set a system up. Like, it's the truth. I mean, that's what it was. Yeah. But that's the problem. A huge problem with conservative thought to me is they look at the Constitution as this holy grail of words. It was a beautifully written document. There are some great ideas in there, and there are some bad ideas in there. Terrible ideas. One of them was owning people as people. It was an awful idea. That was in the Constitution.
Or how about the hypocrisy behind it all, where all men are created equal. Yeah. Yet we have tens and thousands of people in bondage and chains.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's in the Constitution.
It's this country. I mean, now that's a conversation that people don't want to have, is understanding that this country was born out of white supremacy. Yeah, and they don't want to have that conversation.
The aspect of white supremacy, and this is why I hate politics in the modern day, is because there's so much virtue signaling. There's so many key terms that just get thrown around without ever unpacking it. And so, like, when you call somebody a white supremacist, there's something that goes behind that, and people kind of use
this visceral image.
But now it's kind of used as like a slur. You know what I'm saying? You just an insult. You're a white supremacist. You're a racist. Like, you're just trying to piss somebody off. Whereas, like, if you call somebody a racist, no, you actually believe that white people or black people are superior to other races, which is demonstrably false. But like you said, that premise is interwoven in the foundation of this country. They hate to talk about Abraham Lincoln is so touted as this black liberator, but he was a super white supremacist.
Go ask Frederick Douglass, who pleaded with him to get him to understand that, and Benjamin Banneker, who told Thomas Jefferson basically, Nah, we smart, bro. We smart. I know you don't think we are, but
Right.
we're smart.
Right.
And Thomas Jefferson just thought that Benjamin Banneker was just one of,
Right.
you know,
The
one outlier.
Right,
exactly.
Right. And that, I mean, that's another aspect that I always.
But they don't want to talk about that though, because like you said, not to cut you off, but like you said, it's like they put Ronald Reagan on a pedestal, right? You put these people on a pedestal and they can do no wrong. Yeah. But I'm from California, so and I'm from Sacramento, where the Black Panthers marched up to the Capitol. Right. You know what I'm saying? In the '60s, with their straps, walked into the Capitol building because it was legal, and they knew all the rules and all the laws. They legally assembled and walked up to the Capitol with guns drawn, not drawn. Sorry, with holding their weapons, right? And they knew that they couldn't hold them a certain way. I forgot the exact way, but they were law abiding. Shortly thereafter, California Governor Ronald Reagan and I believe his first name was Donald Mulford. They signed the Mulford Act, which and the NRA supported, which essentially banned open carry in California. And they banned it because the Black Panthers, not just because the Black Panthers.
So that's what we got to do to get rid of these guns? Just have a whole bunch of niggas carrying guns?
Hey, I mean, my homie wrote a piece for The Intercept that said, hey, why don't all of us nice, peaceful Muslims just sign up for the NRA, and I'll bet you that they'll change those gun laws. But
it's an interesting dynamic,
though. But that's what California, and when you think about the fact that open carry is banned because of conservative Jesus, that's what I call Ronald Reagan, because of conservative Jesus, and they can't deal with that. They can't deal with the difference in that.
That's an interesting, not to just jump from that to that, but that's an interesting aspect of our society right now is the gun laws. I mean, because you gave me this book. I'm assuming it's about, because it says a disarming history of the Second Amendment. I'm on the fence about gun laws, right?
Yeah.
Because I do think
I can't wait for you to read that book.
Yeah. And granted, it's not a super important issue to me.
Yeah.
Right. So like some issues are important to other people. Like that is not a super important issue to me because I don't love guns.
Right.
And I don't despise them. Right. Like I understand the need to feel protected. So I really get both sides. I really do.
No doubt.
Do I feel like everybody needs an AR-15? Nah. I think it's just like every other problem in this country. The root of it comes from psychology, man.
Wait till you read that.
I'm gonna read that, man.
Excited for you to read it.
I'm gonna read it. But if minorities were legally gun toting, I wonder if the narrative would change.
It's happened already. There's a precedent. California, conservative Jesus did it already.
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about in modern times.
Yeah,
because right now the rhetoric is legal guns. Like, I think there's 300 million people in America, and I think there's over 300 million guns registered right now. It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
That's a lot of guns.
It
man.
It is.
And to me, that people are like, you got the more guns will fix the problem. I'm like, it's coming to a head in this country because
it's saying more nuclear weapons will fix the problem.
That's what I'm saying. So, dog, I saw this NRA propaganda commercial about they're launching the NRA TV, right? And it was this. What is that woman's name?
Dana Lash or Loesch or Leash.
So she's sitting there with a time glass, and it's going the whole time, and then she flips it and says, "Your time is now." She's like, "You want to take our guns? We're not having it. We're doing this. We're doing this." And it's just like it's fear mongering on steroids. And so you're making people believe that the government's gonna come in and take your handguns and knock door to door and they always claim this shit. This we have to protect ourselves from tyranny. Like fam, like even if the government wanted to be tyrannical and take over its people and take away its rights, your gun is not going to stop them.
Yeah, your gun is not gonna stop a fucking MQ-9 Hellfire missile that's gonna shoot through your damn drone and shoot through your house.
Missiles, drones, like tanks.
You know what I mean?
You think your AR-15 gonna stop? It's not. Right. So I think there has to be rational, and I just don't think people are smart. I just don't. No. I don't think people are smart.
Well, and like you said, there's no historical context behind the Second Amendment. And I'm not even halfway through that book yet, but that's one of the things that she points out is that you talked about the history. She says that the history in the context of the Second Amendment, you're talking about a well-regulated militia. Those well-regulated militias at the time ended up being what we now have today as the National Guard.
Right.
That's kind of how they descended. But she said that, but their job at that time was taking land and killing native peoples, the indigenous peoples, and slave patrols.
Jeez.
That's what the well-regulated militias. That was their job at the time.
That's where police originated from.
Right. Well, and that's her point. That's her point, is that she's like, and then she's like, it's so stupid when people on both sides bring up the whole hunting argument. She was like, the Second Amendment was never about hunting, but if it was about hunting niggas and indigenous people
100%.
And taking their land, taking 100%. The indigenous people's land. So,
but see, that's the intellectual honesty that's missing in political discourse. Like you can't say this rebel flag is our tradition without acknowledging that your tradition was on the backs of slaves and off hanging black people from trees. Like you can't say both.
That's not what it meant to me. It's my pride.
Yeah, no.
It's my heritage.
And that's what people don't understand. I don't think that this country right now in this state is able to have intellectual conversations, intellectual honesty in these conversations, because you have to give away some of your ideology, and for some stupid reason we attached our political ideals to our personalities.
Yeah, I mean, it's so. This is kind of, you talk about the transformation out of professional sports and then into back into the real world, so to speak.
Right.
When you've been a football player a majority of your life, and that's really mostly what you've done, what you've known, and then you leave the game, you are no longer an NFL player. Now a part of your identity is stripped from you, right?
Yeah.
Psychologically, that's a tough thing to deal with. Same thing when I speak to a lot of military people, current and former, and we talk about kind of the similarities between the transition, between them transitioning back into civilian life and then NFL players, or professional, but especially NFL players, transitioning into the real world, so to speak. If you tell somebody who is from day one, who has been told their whole life that the Confederate flag means to them and the family, it means that you're a rebel, you love your country, and you will fight your country if your country becomes tyrannical. That's it. That's the conversation that they are being told. That's what the conversation they're having. So you telling somebody who believes that and only that they are a white supremacist because or that the Confederacy was a white supremacist movement,
right,
to secede from the United States because they did not want to allow slavery. Now,
then they like to say, it wasn't about slaves.
But it's a part, right. But it's a part of their identity that's being stripped, and that's tough for them.
It's about states' rights.
Right.
To own slaves.
Exactly. And it's really not about states' rights, because when slaves would escape to the North, then they would want the North to bring those slaves back. And the North was like, they had their own laws where most of the people that came there could have some type of freedom. And the South, they didn't care about states' rights then, because they wanted to send people in and go get them people, go get those runaways.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they don't give a shit about states' rights.
Of course they do.
They don't give a shit about states' rights.
No, it was
They
about.
don't care about states' rights with the marijuana laws that Jeff.
They don't care about now. Yeah, they don't.
So it's all a hypocrisy. It's all like this false ideology.
Isn't there like some kind of right now there's people in California lobbying for like a new California? I heard that they're trying to break off. They're trying to break off from California because like L.A., San Diego, and the Bay Area, like it's ridiculous amount of taxes that they have to pay. But like that hub for entertainment industry that is California isn't like inland California. You know what I mean? So like Eastern California is feeling the pinch of like a Hollywood. Like, and I actually agree with that sentiment. I've never really dug into why they want to branch out, but I thought that was the gist of it, and I'm pretty sure somebody in the comments are gonna correct me if I'm wrong. But
the thing with that is they're one of the people that is backing that idea is a group. I forgot the name of the group, but they are essentially a white supremacist group, and not not just throwing that out there, but
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like we talked about, right? Everybody is. If you're not brown, you're a white supremacist. Talking to you, dude. Nah. So, damn, I don't want to. I forgot the. Was it this? Was it the Southern Poverty Law Center, I believe, but one of the major organizations that designate terrorist groups and like white supremacist groups, dangerous, really violent, dangerous groups, labeled this group that was backing this movement, and so it's like. What is their demands? Like why did they want to? I thought it was because of the taxes. I mean I could have been. Yeah, you know what? It's you always got like you always got to dig deeper though, because it's like it's like, why don't they want black people to vote? Or why back in the days, there's always a reason behind it. They'll throw some bullshit out there like the fucking tax cuts, where where they're saying we're gonna give all this money to people that deserve it. And then you look at the next 10 years, what that tax cut is going to do to poor people and people that are making a shit ton of money. Is going to be the disparity is going to be huge. But this group, when you've got any type of white supremacist views in your background, there's no alliance with you. It's like when Donald Trump came out and said and was talking about, like NATO's got to pay their money. We need to get out of this country and get out of that country. I'm like, oh shit. But then I had to step back and think like, nah, because he fucking hates Muslims and he hates immigrants and he didn't really care for black folks, and all these other policies is torture policies. Like I can't fuck with that dude. So
not to cut you off. So what do you say to the people? Because I've had this conversation with many people, and I've had to scale back, right? Because I basically had to just say, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, is a duck. But people who say he's not a white supremacist, right? Because they'll say like, well, what has he done that's racist? And I have to think about it, right?
I don't.
He said, because he says things, and I think he knows. I don't think he knows. I'll take that back. I think he said. I think if I was to bet money, I would be like, yeah, I do think he's probably a white supremacist. He does feel like white people are a little more superior than others. But can I point to like certain exact things that are demonstrably 100% objectively racist? Right. I really can't. Right. Can you?
Okay, so how much time we got?
But I mean, you could say the Mexicans and the rapists. It's hard to pin that as like that's a racist. That's a racist man.
He's talking about all Mexicans that come here. He's not talking about.
I understand.
And some of them, I assume, are good people.
Okay, like, so it's just like the whole locker room talk, right? So like if I'm driving one of my dogs and I see an Asian driver, I'm be like, this motherfucker can't drive, especially if he cuts me off, right? It's just it's stereotypes and it's jokes, but there's a certain truth that comes with those stereotypes. Am I racist against Asians? Absolutely not, right? But like.
But you're not the president of the United States, though. So your beliefs don't affect the country and the rest of the world like his beliefs, because his ideology is.
Okay, so answer me this then. And dog, by no means am I a Trump
no, I hear you. Let's go.
But like I like playing devil's advocate because it checks my.
No doubt, you have to.
Right. So, you're right. I'm not the president of the United States, and my ideals don't affect policy and things like that. But as a man that loves truth, as a man that respects people that say what they feel. So if a man says what he feels 100% of the time, is that a dishonorable trait?
No. Like Malcolm X said, listen, I appreciate someone who will tell me how you think and feel, to tell me that, as opposed to you hiding behind my back and stabbing my back or try to act like you my friend when you're really doing something to try to undermine what I'm doing or try to undermine my beliefs. Right. That's paraphrasing it. But so I think, to me, some of the most glaring things have been his outrage at the Central Park Five, right?
That was
now. So he did this. He took out a it was either a front page or a back page.
It was front.
He took out a whole front page joint, right? And even after they were cleared, through DNA, which is like one in 1 billion chance or something like that of it not being them, and of them being exonerated essentially from that crime, and he still like dug his heels in, right? That's because his idea of what a young African American and young Latino men are is that they're criminals. He said, "What were they doing in that park? Were they playing hopscotch or something like that?" He said, like niggas ain't allowed to be in the park.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or just in general, like anything y'all do, niggas hanging out on the corner, then y'all are criminals, or y'all are up to no good, right? There's a number of things, but I think that's important to look at his history, and then you go back to some of his discrimination lawsuits against black folks,
and it was some Latino
and Hispanics, yeah. So this goes back, and then when the older you get, the more you don't give a fuck, and we've seen him come out and say these things. And one of my things is like after the whole thing happened in Charlottesville, right? Before I say that, because this happened before Charlottesville.
I really tried to play devil's advocate there, but I just don't. I mean, I'm with you. I'm like 100%.
I feel you. But this is one of the things too, though. They now here's when you get to the other side of that. They took away millions of dollars from organizations that were fighting to combat white extremist groups. They cut the money for that. That was the millions of dollars that was going to these groups that were countering white extremist groups, right? And violent white extremist groups, because that's what they do. They carry guns and they have these ideas. They cut that funding, and then a few months later, Charlottesville happened. It took him 48 hours to come out and condemn Nazis, white supremacists who were marching in the streets saying Jews will not replace us with tiki torches, right? How long did it take him to come out and call the NFL players sons of bitches? Yeah. Right? That's his. It don't take him no time. And even when he did condemn white supremacists, it was a scripted speech. Yeah. And when they got him off the cuff, minutes later, that's when he came back and said, "But there were very fine people on both sides." Yeah. Nigga, make your mind up. Yeah. No, I know what your mind is. You believe you are. This is what I said. If no one has yet to prove that he is a white supremacist, he has at the very least, he has given them a voice, because now they coming out the woodworks and like it's all good. He has given them a voice. They think they can come out. He has retweeted white supremacist groups from Europe. Right,
I saw that. What threw me for a super loop was Steve Bannon was speaking the other day. And he
at the very least he's a white nationalist. At the very least,
how do you be a white nationalist but not a supremacist?
But that's where no, I understand. You know what I'm saying, because his immigration policies will show that, and white nationalism is a major root of that is racism.
The whole like people from Norway and then the shithole countries. You're right. Like I try not to throw the word around because it's used
because it's such a knockout punch, but it's a part of our history. It's a knockout punch because people don't. You call, like you said, you call somebody a white supremacist, then it's like, oh, you know what I'm saying? That's not saying like somebody is, you're a hypocrite. That stings more because people get this visceral image of a Ku Klux Klan cross-burning crazy motherfucker holding shotguns and all kind of guns.
But that's why if you call somebody a white supremacist,
but that's not what a white supremacist necessarily
that's what I'm saying.
They're
but that's
business suits now.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is they'll deny it because in their head that's the image that projects.
And I've said that on television. I've tweeted that because you gotta we think about that visceral image of what a white supremacist is. We think of the hoods. We think of them getting together with a cross burning and a black person hanging in the back. That's the image that we conjure up in our minds of a white supremacist. But that's not necessarily what a white supremacist is. They are now in business suits and walking around every day like without the hood, just minus the hoods.
Yeah, I mean, white supremacy is embedded in like I said, in the fabric of the foundation of this country.
And not to mention, Trump's father was arrested at a KKK march. He was not counter protesting, by the way.
Did they try to claim that? They try to claim he's counter protesting?
No.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
Come on, that's a super.
It's like Trump came out and said that wasn't him on the video with the Billy Bush talking about grab her by the pussy. He said that wasn't me. Like, dude,
at first he said it wasn't him. Oh my god,
man! Like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, this whole Stormy Daniels shit that'd be funny if this is the shit that takes him out. You know what I'm saying? After all of the shit that we put up with, all the dumb shit he said, Stormy Daniels gonna take you out, fam. That's insane, man. Well, yo, we could talk politics for hours, bro, because you know I love just sitting and building with intelligent, thought-provoking human beings, man. And you definitely one of those. So I appreciate you coming on, bro. Like we cool outside of this, man. So we're gonna continue to rap and build. Appreciate the book, but as a fan of the podcast, man, we end it the same way every time. We're trying to get Jim Carrey to come rap with your dog. Man, yeah, that's my guy. Oh man, I love Jim Carrey. So we ask every single guest, man, to try to convince that cat to come rap with me, man. So if you could do the same, just looking at the cameraman and talk to your boy Jim.
Hey Jim, big fan, man. Just suppose that you were walking around and you were in Houston and you decided to do Arian Foster's podcast. And then you decided to light a cigarette. And then you go in and you light a cigarette and you're smoking this cigarette. And then you walk in and you do this podcast with Arian Foster, and then let me say something. You light it, and the podcast is fire. Come in here and do that with it, man. I need to see my dog in here, man. I was a big fan of you, still a big fan. I love you. Come in here with my dog and do that.
Much love, man. You
that was a terrible
fire. Was that Fire Marshal Bill?
Fire Marshal Bill.
Cool,
that was my favorites.
I knew it was one of them Jones. Snoop did the same one, man.
That's the best.
Nah, man. But I appreciate you coming down, man. Giving me a small slice of your time. Time is the only luxury we have in this world, man.
Especially with North Korea and Trump in this negotiation.
Oh, shit. We didn't even touch on that. We're gonna do a part 2, man. Much love, bro.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.